Good morning, everyone. Arthur told me that as moderator I get 1 minute, so I shall do my very best. Welcome to session 1, sponsored by Central Asia Metals. This is a conference about sustainable mining, and this is a session about sustainable mining. And I wanted to spend my minute reflecting on what sustainability and sustainable mining means to each of us. I think many people have become comfortable with the term sustainability, and at ERM we adopt the conventionally held definition, at high level at least, that sustainability is about meeting the economic and social needs of the current generation without compromising the opportunities and needs of future generations. But what about sustainable mining? This is a term that's used very freely, as you can see around this conference, but what does it mean, and how does it sit with the reputation of mining companies, at least in some quarters, as being polluters, as being dirty, bad for the environment, and exploitative? There's no doubt that mining today meets the needs of society in this technological age. The minerals that our clients and companies provide make up a large part of the constituents of the mobile phones, of which I seem to have 2. Electric cars, the batteries that power those electric cars, the infrastructure that powers the batteries. They're essential for the low voltage lighting, the solar panels, the wind turbines, and many, many more aspects of what we use as products to define a low carbon economy and a transition towards low carbon. But the mining sector is under external scrutiny from NGOs and society like never before, and this creates a very complex and very emotive sometimes set of issues. The fact is that there are many examples, sadly, of bad performance, but there are also many, many examples of very good performance of mines which operate in harmony with the communities in which they sit, generating economic growth and responsibly managing environmental impacts throughout the life cycle and also the supply chain. And eventually, when the resources are exhausted, those mines seek to leave a positive legacy. At ERM, we've identified the best practices which balance the needs, the short and the long-term needs of local communities and society in general. No mine does everything perfectly, but these mines set the standard, each in their own way. They deliver for the local communities in which they sit. We call them the mines we want to see, and we very much look forward to seeing some of the best examples here at this conference. So at this point, I'll hand over to Marcin Sadowski, Head of Raw Materials at EASME, European Commission. Martin.
Thank you, Barry. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure to be here and to start this session. I already have 3 minutes past here on the clock. Is that? Could we reset it, please? So, the European Union's policy in raw materials started some 10 years ago with the aim of securing a sustainable supply of raw materials for the European economy, and I stress the word sustainable. It addresses 3 main fields: ensuring a level playing field in the access to resources in third countries, fostering sustainable supply from European sources, and making use of what we already have, so boosting resource efficiency and recycling. The policy started in a moment where we became very aware that certain raw materials were difficult to get in Europe. And in this context, there was a list of 14 critical raw materials first published in 2010. This list has since been updated in 2014, and the latest version in was published last year, contains 27 critical raw materials. Very briefly, these are materials which are of importance to the European economy, and this factor of importance is on the horizontal axis, and are associated with a risk of supply, and this is on the vertical axis. So those that have a combination of risk and importance are considered to be critical raw materials and extremely important to the European economy. And these are the ones marked in red on the graph here. The Raw Materials Initiative set up the European Innovation Partnership on Raw Materials, which came up with a strategic implementation plan of actions to be performed in order to achieve the goal of sustainable raw materials in Europe. And these actions are being carried out, and they are funded through the European Union's Framework Programme for Research and Innovation, Horizon 2020, in a process that briefly looks as follows. There is every year the publication of what we call the work programme, which is a list of topics that will be funded in that particular year. People submit proposals, which then go into this black box called evaluation, and some of these proposals are funded as a function of the available budget, so regrettably, most of them are not funded. Those that are funded are come in three flavors, three categories. There are research and innovation actions, and coordination and support actions, which do not sort of directly address innovation, but are more about community building, database building, identification of best practices, and so on. The first two types are technological actions, and we classify them in terms of technology readiness levels. So as you see, research and innovation actions are lower down on the scale of technology readiness level, 3 to 5, whereas innovation actions are expected to be much closer to the market, 5 to 7, typically in terms of technology readiness levels. So this is the area in which at least the raw materials part of Horizon 2020 is moving in. The evaluation process, the black box on the previous diagram, consists of mostly, as you see, the part in green is external experts. It is a peer review process. The Commission handles the sheet of proposals, eligibility check, and so on, and then the final ranking list, whereas the evaluation itself is performed by external evaluators. Each proposal is evaluated by at least 3, but very often more, evaluators, according to a very well-defined set of criteria. These evaluators then, having independently of each other assessed a given proposal, come together and reach a consensus concerning that proposal. This is then scored according to a, again, well-defined ladder of scores, and proposals are funded according to the ranking list until the budget runs out. And again, I stress, I stress the fact that it is a peer review process, and I take the opportunity, as always, to call upon you and everybody else that you know who could potentially be an expert to be an expert evaluator for the raw materials proposals. It is a service to the community, I would say, an obligation to the community. The whole process is only as good as its experts, and we need experts. And there is actually a little bit of money involved, which is the carrot, and also the fact that many people find that being an evaluator is a great help in preparing proposals in the future. It allows them to understand exactly how the system works. And because we are obliged to have panels of experts which are balanced in terms of geography and gender, I would like to stress that ladies are especially welcome. The work program, the current work program, we are in the middle of evaluating the 2018 work program. It is a two-stage evaluation, so we are between the first and the second stage. The 2019 work program the call will be opened somewhere in October, presumably, and the 2020 work program, which so far is only an outline, should be published in its final version in early 2019. So you see that we have 4 topics in innovation actions which will be repeated next year. We have 2 topics in research and innovation actions, and much fewer than previously, coordination and support actions. I will not go into the detail of this. You can also see that the budget is increasing slightly. This year we had 20 million for the innovation actions. Next year it will be 30 million for the same innovation action topics, plus 20 million for the other innovation action, and another 20 million for research and innovation actions. So increasing budget. Just to give you an idea, the actions, the projects that we have right now that have been funded under Horizon 2020, there are 56 of them, for a total of 303 million euro. The map shows the geographical spread. Well, most of it is unsurprisingly in the European Union, but not exclusively. The outreach is much wider. All our projects, this is called for in the work program, are expected to deliver solutions developed through industrially and user-driven multidisciplinary consortia. The industrially and user-driven part is an important part of all the work programs, and all projects, all actions have to have this dimension, as well as being obliged to address several other horizontal issues, such as obviously being friendly to the environment, taking care of health and safety issues of workers, and addressing the increasingly important question of public acceptance of mining operations. This apart from the technological issues that they are developing. The projects, the actions we have in terms of topic, as you see, many of them are coordination and support actions. 19. There were many coordination and support action topics launched in the beginning. The second biggest group is processing, widely understood, and then extraction, exploration, substitution of critical raw materials. There was some activity on finding alternative materials to those that were on the critical raw materials list. In terms of funding, of course, the division looks slightly different. Coordination and support actions do not require that much funding, so over 100 million goes to processing projects, 75 to extraction, 47 to exploration, and 19 for substitution. Altogether, we have 577 participants in our actions. Participants not in the sense of individual people, but of institutions or companies. And these are independent participants, not participations, because of course there are participants who participate in many actions. So 500, almost 600 participants, of which, as you see, 54% from private for-profit entities, 30% together from higher or secondary education establishments and or research organizations, some 8% from public bodies and others. So indeed the industrially and user-driven consortia image applies. In terms of funding, this is the overall 303 million divided, as you can see, roughly half to the private for-profit entities and less than half to research organizations and universities. It should be said that universities and research organizations tend to participate in several projects. This is what they do. It's not that they take more money in every project. The relative increase of funding comes from several participations. So that was the present state of affairs. A peek at the future. There is an info day on September 11th in Brussels concerning the whole of what we call Societal Challenge 5, which is climate action, environment, resources, and raw materials. So all those wishing to submit a proposal in 2019 are invited to the info day. As I mentioned, the 2019 call will be opened somewhere in October, and the deadline for submission will be February 19th, 2019. The work program for 2020 will be published, should be published in its full version also in February. Another date, which is not on the slide, is the Raw Materials Week in Brussels on the week of November 11th. It is a good opportunity for networking with the European Raw Materials Society. And then the next framework program for research and innovation, which is called Horizon Europe, is being prepared. The Commission proposal for it was published a few days ago, and as you can see, the outlook is optimistic. The Commission is suggesting 100 billion for the 7-year period as compared to 70 billion for Horizon 2020. This has to be accepted by the European Parliament and the European Council, but the outlook seems to be optimistic. And in this optimistic tone, I leave you there is an overview of all running raw materials projects available on the webpage of the Executive Agency for Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises. With a map, you can see where what project is doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marcin. Very interesting. Okay, I'd like to call Victor Correa, who's President of the European Federation of Geologists.
Thank you. Last Thursday, after preparing my presentation for this conference, I opened the email I received from the organizers with the last version of the agenda. And I came to the conclusion that my presentation was not providing insight to answer these two questions. The questions that you just answered in the survey that David previously made. And I decided that this is probably a good occasion to share with you some of the international insight that we collected in the international Raw Materials Observatory on these two topics. Let me just introduce first International Raw Materials Observatory. This is an outcome of a project named INTRO that was funded by the Horizon 2020 program. We received money basically this was a coordination and support action, and we received funds to map best practice in 5 reference countries and to create a not-for-profit independent organization to favor international dialogues and cooperation on raw materials. That was the observatory. And in the process of benchmarking best practice, we covered 5 countries: Australia, Canada, South Africa, Japan, and the United States. And the question that you might ask is public acceptance of mining the same in these 5 developed countries? Just let me start by Australia. Australia is one of the major exporters of raw materials. It is a main contributor of raw materials to the global economy, and the development of mining in Australia is closely linked to the market of Japan first, later Asian countries like South Korea and Malaysia, and nowadays China. So you can see the destination of the exports of raw materials in Australia are closely linked to the development in these countries. And Australia is ranked normally in the 5 top countries in the Fraser report. We are talking about West Australia. Does this mean that the social acceptance of mining in Australia is good? Well, just let me show you what's happening now in Perth. Perth is the capital of Western Australia. It's a mining city. In 1985 it had 1 million inhabitants. Nowadays it has almost 2 million, and it is expected to reach 3 million inhabitants by 2040. You might expect that people in Perth is in favor of mining, but this is news from 2016. Residents living south of Perth are now protesting against an Alcoa refinery because they are storing red mud. And people were saying that red mud is something that is creating clouds of dust, and they don't like it. Even when they are receiving assurance that red mud is not harm to their health. So what we are seeing is that apparently countries like Australia also have problems with social acceptance of mining. Another example is Canada. As Madam Ambassador just said, Canada has top technology in mining. If you look to the population density in Canada, and if you look to the east part of the country, you see that this area of Montreal, the province of Quebec, also has issues with mining. There is a lot of social opposition to mining in Quebec. Of course, the social opposition to mining is much lower in the provinces where the population density is not so high. But Canadians also have one of the best examples of education and outreach. This initiative which was not by accident, was not mentioned in the previous presentation, but this initiative called Mining Matters reached more than 600,000 people, and it has been active for more than 20 years. It's an education initiative, so educators are receiving materials that were prepared by geoscientists and educators for free, and these materials try to underline the importance of mining to society. According with the research we did, this might be the most important reason why mining in Canada is so well accepted. Of course, not in Montreal. Japan. Japan is another Of the countries that we followed, as I said, it were 5 countries, this is the third. You don't have mining in Japan. I mean, you don't have metal mining with the exception of just one mine, a gold mine, by accident the most profitable gold mine in the world. But they have industrial minerals, so they have quarries, they have cement production. And mining in Japan has a lot of social opposition. But the social opposition to mining is being curbed by 2 effects. The first one is legislation. Legislation on mining in Japan is very stringent, and people knows that companies are obliged to follow that legislation. The second one is something that exists in Japan only, and it's called the keiretsu. Keiretsu, it's a group of companies that are binded together informally, so they belong to the same group. And this is a way of distributing the wealth of mining across society. That's one of the reasons why, despite the social opposition, mining in Japan is running well. Finally, or almost finally, South Africa. The mining landscape in South Africa has changed tremendously in the last 20 years. In the 80s, mining was responsible for more than 20% of South African GDP. Now, it only accounts for 8% of the country's GDP. Mining was also a main provider of jobs. In the peak, almost 700,000 people were employed in mining, and now it's less than 500,000. Roughly speaking, there was a 35% reduction in jobs in mining. And the majority of the problems in South Africa are linked with labor. Because of mechanization, the jobs in mining are few and few, meaning that the social opposition to mining is also starting to appear in South Africa. As this news from The Guardian shows, it's also from 2016. And now finally, the last country that we mapped, the United States. And in the United States, you can see that you have, at the same size, the best jurisdictions for mining, like Nevada, and the worst places for mining, like California. And this is something that is normal in the United States. You can have states where it's very easy to have mining, with a lot of support and community support to mining, and others where mining is not tolerated. Meaning that, first, population density counts. All the places that we have been seeing with opposition to mining have a stronger population density. And of course, if population density increases, like it happened in Western Australia, so does social opposition to mining. Second, if we want to curb the opposition to mining, apparently there are 2 ways that can be used. The first one is this engagement of the mining with the civil society being done in Japan. The second, it's investing in education. That's the case of Canada. This Mining Matters initiative is one of the best examples that we can find. And the question is now, is this enough to answer the 2 questions of this session? In my opinion, it is not. This is the cover of The Economist first issue of 2018. Every year, The Economist publish at the beginning of the year, in the cover, some images that show the main drivers of change that are expected in that year. You can see in that pictograms, you can see Trump, you can also see Kim Jong-il, you can see the World Cup, meaning that all these are drivers of challenge. So you can have the best information on past practice, you can have the maps and the outcomes from the international benchmarks, but you also need to have some type of foresight in the future. And something that we can know for sure, because of the news of this morning, is that the future is difficult to predict. And if I was in your shoes as a manager of a mining corporation, I'd like to see or to have a better understanding of the future. In the observatory, we are doing this using scenarios. Scenarios are nothing new. But the advantage of using scenarios is that you can basically behave like a captain of a ship. You can see the wave length, you can see the wind, and depending on the storm that you are expected to face, depending on your destination, depending on your boat, you can decide to face the storm or just to run from it. As I said, this is a not-for-profit organization, and we work basically in foresight of mineral raw materials. The observatory is open to organizations, to all types of organizations, and in case you want to know more about the observatory, feel free to contact me. You have my contact details there. I'd like to thank the organizers, and also to thank you for your time and attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. I'd like to introduce Nikolai Mikolov, President of the Macedonian Association of Mining.
Го поздравувам.
I would like to welcome the MINEX 2018 conference in Skopje. I think that we will be able to draw lessons, especially those of us in mining in Macedonia. We heard nice words and presentations. I especially liked the harmony between investors and local self-government. I believe that one of the reasons why Macedonian mining found itself in the situation it is today is precisely this: lack of harmony between local government, investors, and companies operating mines. Macedonia is a small country. Its overall surface area is about 26,000 square kilometers. It has about 2,000 inhabitants. Fortunately for us, Macedonia has a lot of ore and minerals that were and will be quite some potential for Macedonia. Fortunately or not, when we talk about mining, we talk about everything related to mines. This involves the stone industry, decorative minerals, marble, and so on, and coal. Which is owned by the state. In Macedonia, there are more than 500 companies registered in the mining industry. As the Deputy Vice Prime Minister said, the sector overall employs about 12,000 people. The average salary in Macedonia is low, but in mining it's one of the highest in the country. It's a bit over 500 euros net. This is low for the EU, but I'm underlining this so that we bear in mind that we're talking about an industry that improves economic life in the country. total export from mining in 2017 was around 230 million US dollars. The main exporter are metal mines. They export more than $170 million, whereas the non-metallic sector accounts for about $63 million. The import in non-metal products is more than $400 million. This is an opportunity, and the mining industry here should take note. We should take advantage of the potential of non-metallic raw materials in order to improve the export-import balance for Macedonia. I mentioned coal. It's found around the country, it's state-owned, and we're only using it for its energy potential right now. Metallic raw materials, they are interesting right now. They are an interesting sector, and as we said, there is a lack of metals right now in the world, and we would like to pay more attention to this issue. Unfortunately, we just have the 3 lead and zinc mines for copper. It's Puchim. For nickel, we have Ržanova, it's already depleted, then antimony in Lojane, chromium in Raduša. Generally speaking, we have maybe 4 metal mines, 3 of them for lead and zinc and 1 for copper. And we are now opening new copper mines with substantial difficulties. One of the main reasons is perhaps the misunderstanding between investors and local governments, or mining companies and local governments. Unfortunately, we sent a negative message to investors that in Macedonia it is difficult and unclear how to finance mining. Recently, we've awarded a lot of concession permits, both for exploration and extraction. And the impression is that we've done this in a chaotic manner. The result was the ensuing confusion, where the local population could not be prepared to assess what's good, how good it is, and what the locals would get or lose. Especially considering that Macedonia is a small country and we have to distribute our resources well and afford a better life for our citizens. You can see here the copper output. This is mainly copper concentrate, lead concentrate, and zinc concentrate. It's not huge amounts, but for Macedonia it's significant. In addition, let me say that I like the words by the Vice Prime Minister, but we should look at our mistakes and see what we need to do to restore public confidence and achieve this harmony between mining companies and the local population. The Macedonian Mining Association has analyzed this issue a lot. I have to say that we lack clear dialogue, even a desire for clear dialogue between mining companies and local government. This was confirmed yesterday at our trilateral meeting between the Canadian Embassy, Macedonian mining and local government. We failed to clearly express the issues. This table shows the export by year, 2014 to 2017. This is both export and import, and you can see that we have substantial imports. Our association set ourselves the task that we need to direct investors to mines that will improve our export effect. We have high quality marble here, but we've reduced ourselves to exporting just marble blocks. And then we import them back as finished products. This has an adverse effect on the economy. You see here the locations for lead, zinc, copper and nickel in Macedonia. Fortunately or unfortunately, they are mainly focused in the east and southeast. Hence, a lot of questions from the NGOs. Why is this so? Hence the answer to questions by NGOs why the mines are in the east and southeast. On this map, you can see the clays, bentonites and refractory clays. We used to produce a lot of clay brick. We even exported some. Right now we have 0 exports and a lot of imports. This is further potential in Macedonia. Our gypsum is well known. It is found in the west part of the country. I mentioned our marbles. We have good reserves and high quality of granite. Mineral water is one of the current issues. A lot of concession permits are awarded. They work well. And they also include geothermal water. This is the distribution and evidence that Macedonia has a lot of mineral resources. Unfortunately, we are not exploiting it very well. I tried to be brief as per the instructions, and I expect that the Macedonian Mining Association and the representatives of the mining industry here will draw some useful lessons here. I would like to thank the organizers. Thank you.
Next up we have Nick Clark, Chairman of our session sponsors, Central Asia and
Thank you. We've heard a lot this morning about responsible mining. Central Asia Metals, we came into the Balkans to acquire the Sasa mine, and a lot has been said about the Sasa mine. It's a lead zinc mine in the eastern part of the country. It's the largest employer in the underground mining sector, employing over 700 employees. But Central Asia Metals started life in Kazakhstan back in the mid-2000s, and we have one operation in Kazakhstan which we've operated and recover copper Kazakhstan, as you may know, is in the former Soviet Union. We've operated there for 12, 13 years now, very successfully and in great partnership with the government. We also have an exploration play in Kazakhstan called Shuak. And this is a copper project where we hope to see some oxide material and some sulfide material come onto our books. But today I want to talk about our operation at Sasa. Macedonia, you can see on the map there, is quite small compared to Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan actually is one of the largest countries in the world. It's the 9th largest country in the world. Macedonia is not quite up there in terms of size, but in terms of importance to us, it is extremely important. The Sasa mine has been going for many years, and we're very proud to now own it and run it. A little about Camel. Camel, we're a listed company on the London Stock Exchange, on the AIM market of the London Stock Exchange. We raised about $60 million in 2010 with the prime purpose of building our copper project in Kazakhstan. And you can see over the years, 2012-15, we've expanded that asset in Kazakhstan. We now produce around about 14,000 tons of copper cathode at industry low costs from that operation. And this has allowed us to pay a dividend back to shareholders. Now, this sets us apart from many other mining companies in as much as since 2012, a mere 2 years after listing on the stock exchange, we've been paying dividends back to shareholders. But we've also been amassing and looking for other opportunities. And in late 2017, we acquired the Sasa mine from their current owners at that time. And so since late 2017 until now, we've owned and operated the Sasa mine. Camel is listed on the exchange, as I said. We've been going since 2010. And you can see on the graph on the left-hand side, the blue line, the blue graph line, is our share price, and the solid line on the brown is the copper price. So in spite of a generally depreciating copper value, the share price of Camel has continued to rise. And this is because we pay dividends and we operate very sustainably in our operation in Kazakhstan, and now most recently in Macedonia. And you can see on the bottom right-hand side the list of our shareholders. Now, we are a wholly public company. Our shareholders are institutional funds based primarily in London, but you will see that of that shareholder register there, we've got some of the largest fund managers in the planet, many of them American, and something like 25% of our shareholders are actually American-based. So there's a lot of interest in how we operate in this country, and coming back to the Deputy Prime Minister's comments earlier about encouraging foreign direct investment, a lot of our shareholders, American-based, take a great interest in how we operate in country. In terms of our market capitalisation, we have a market cap of about £500 million, just under $800 million, based on our two assets, one in Kazakhstan and Sasa. Now, Sasa has been going many years. Many of you will be aware of this. It was originally established in the 1960s. It then went out of production in 2003 and re-emerged when the Solvay Group acquired the asset in 2006. They subsequently sold it, having invested quite a bit in new flotation, new equipment underground, and they sold it to Lynx Resources, who ultimately we acquired the operation of late last year in November. Now, the Sasa mine is a typical lead, zinc, skarn ore body. It's very common throughout this part of the world, and as Nikolai said just now, we have a lot of these type of deposits, underground deposits, in this whole Balkans-Tethyan belt. Now, the ore body is approximately 1 kilometre along strike and about 700 metres deep. And we expect this mine to last of the order of 20 years if we maintain our drilling rates to explore and open up new resources available to mining. And we'll be looking to extend the mine both at depth, below the green and yellow you can see, and also along strike. The Sasa mine was re-established with new flotation. We used modern mining equipment, drilling boomers to drill and blast the muck from underground. We have a new flotation plant that was implemented in 2013. So this is quite a modern mine and very efficient. The mining method is a simple sub-level caving system. We use single boom drilling rigs to drill up holes. We blast the muck and we muck it out, and part of the muck comes out via haulage trucks up to surface, and about 30–40% of the muck comes up by a shaft system out to the plant. The plant is a simple plant. There's comminution, which means we take the rock, break it down to small constituent parts. We then have standard flotation. It is used worldwide in many, many operations, and this separates the product into two products for sale. One is a zinc product and one is a lead product. We then dewater those and we put them into trucks, and some is sent to Bulgaria, to the KCM smelter there, and some is sold to into Poland on completely open and transparent transactions. Now, the Sasa production, how much does it produce? Well, over the years, the tonnage from underground averages 700 to 800,000 tons. Currently, the mine will produce around about 21,500 tons of zinc in concentrate and around about 29 to 30,000 tons of lead in concentrate. So you can see it produces quite an amount of metal, and of course that benefits the employees in the mine in terms of salaries, and obviously the state in terms of tax take. But it's a fairly steady, the recoveries to metal are industry standard, and we will look in the future to invest more. In fact, we've just installed a new mill, which hopefully will increase recovery at a cost of around about $1 million. Statistically, the mine produces very consistently in terms of the availability of the mine, that is on a day-to-day basis. What sort of availability are we getting out of our mill, out of our equipment? The grade that comes out is a very consistent, about 7% combined lead and zinc grade. And then you can see over the years, between 2010 and 2017, how consistent the output from the mine has been. So this brings us to the life. How long is this mine going to operate? And let me assure everybody in the room, Central Asia Metals is a mining company. We're not in this business to sell this mine on. We're in the business to build a bigger and better company, mining company. Sasa was a strategic acquisition for us, and it ensures a cash flow and an operating mine for the next 20 years and beyond, we hope. The current reserve life is about 11 million tonnes, but we would hope to add 6 to 7 million tonnes from what we call inferred material as we go along and we drill more. So the future of Sasa, currently we're mining in what's called the Savinia Reka area. We would expect in time to go down to Golema Reka, which is down the valley to the south, and there's an area between these two mining regions where we would hope to, we can't actually show it on here, we would hope to discover and put into reserve more material. Currently we're constructing a new tailings facility to extend the life of the tailings impoundment. Now this is a $12 million investment. This year I think our capital expenditure at the project is going to amount to $14 to $16 million. So it's a big financial commitment that this company has made. But we never forget what our obligations are to our people and to the environment. This is a safe mine. We had no lost time injury accidents in 2017. We had a small one back in February, very minor, when somebody hurt their hand and had a few days off. But nonetheless, we are a safe mine, and we've undertaken a hazard identification, risk assessment and control process towards implementing safety systems, OHSAS 18001. We have a new safety improvement strategy in place. We abide by the Equator Principles. The Equator Principles define the obligations of a mining company if it is to look for foreign debt investment, and we have 3 banks that provide us debt as a corporate entity, which enable us to acquire this asset. And we have a very strong environmental compliance obligation. We are ISO 14001 registered, and we're the first mine in Macedonia to achieve such a status. We have an environmental and social action plan that we're developing and looking to fund that as we go forward. So we're doing a lot of stakeholder engagement. Now, what do we do locally? We've assisted in the development of cultural centres. We've purchased equipment, we've purchased an ambulance for the local community. We sponsor football, women's and men's football teams, and the Mining Day celebrations, obviously, in the local village. But as importantly, we've been supporting the President's initiative in terms of schools and kindergartens in the region. So we actively engage with the local community in Kamienitka, with the mayor, and we support a lot of the local initiatives. And let me just say, in terms of the benefits back to employees, we have over 700 employees on site. We've just agreed a wage rise for employees into double-digit numbers, which is one of the highest wage settlements I think the country's ever seen. And we were supported by the Federation of Unions, the President, and the President of the Meso Union in terms of those negotiations. And when we made the offer, we were told this is a very, very generous offer. And the workforce gladly accepted the pay rise, obviously. And we're happy to provide that. Now, back to Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan, we operate and have done, as I said, since the mid-2000s. We've been producing copper since 2012. We've produced over 70,000 tonnes of copper from this project at class-leading C1 cash cost, very low cash cost, which has enabled us to have the wherewithal to acquire Sasa, but also to invest back with our shareholders in dividends. Now, we recover about 14,000 tonnes of copper per annum, and this is an operation. It's called acid leaching, followed by SXEW recovery. I think there's a similar project with SXEW recovery constructed down at Kazandol. This is a safe operation. We work hand in glove with the government and the local community, and have done for many years, and have a lot of support from that sector. Our exploration program, this is talking about the future. Again, in Kazakhstan, we're spending over $2.5 million this year on an exploration program to look for more copper in the ground to take us into the future. Because this company, Central Asia Metals, building a bigger business, is about finding and acquiring new assets. So what is the outlook for the business? We have now currently 2 low-cost, low-capex operations. After the cessation of the construction works at TSF4, the new tailings dam at Macedonia, we'll be looking at bringing in new equipment for the underground workings and some of the capital programs to actually extend the life of the mine down at depth. But we'll be doing those in the years to come, and we're not afraid to make that investment. We have 3 commodities which we mine, copper, lead and zinc, which internationally, you'll be aware, are the 3 most important ingredients for economic growth. So I think we're well placed in the Balkans region, in the former Soviet Union, to show how a successful mining company can operate successfully with the local community, with its workforce and with the government. We pay our taxes, we pay our dues on time, we employ over 700 people in Macedonia, and we're very proud to own and operate the major underground mine in this country. So with that, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Nick. I'd like to call Dominic Roberts, Operations Director at MINEX.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Well, from the world of the public market and IPOs and LSE and stock markets, investors, American funds, I'm now going to take us all the way down to a small mine in Bosnia. My name is Dominic Roberts. I'm the Operations Director of MINEX. We are a privately owned mining company based in London. We were established in 2003. Today we operate 5 polymetallic base metal mines in Bosnia and Serbia. In Serbia, Bosilegrad, Rudnik, Veliki Maidan. Across into Bosnia, our largest mine, our Sasa in Srebrenica, and then the recently opened Olivo mine, which I'll talk more about later. We have a further 2 mining projects under development. And also, it always sounds rather grand when I say this, but we also own and operate the largest lead smelter in Russia, Fregat, located near Moscow, which has a 170,000 tonne per year capacity recycling lead acid batteries. And across all those operations, we employ some 2,500 people. But today I thought it would be interesting to talk about my own company for once and our experiences, and actually directly my experiences as the project director of opening the first new mine in a generation in Bosnia. We acquired the Olivo concession in 2012 from a public tender. The project itself is located between Sarajevo and Tuzla in the Federation of Bosnia. It's a small project, especially compared to what Nick's just been talking about. We have 2.7 million tonnes of high-grade sericite, lead carbonate. And when I say high-grade, actually we've got in situ grades in place in fact, I think over 5 metres of 50% lead at certain areas. And I think there is exploration potential at depth here, but we'll come on to that later. Critically, though, when we acquired the project, it was a new concession. Whilst it was a brownfield, there had been historic works there, we didn't acquire any of the historic licences or permits. We had to start from fresh. And as part of that, we got 11,000 metres of underground works. There had been extensive exploration and development in the 1960s, 70s and 80s. And actually, towards the end of the 1980s, a small pilot plant had been built, but unfortunately, the Civil War rolled right over the top and stayed on top of this mine for a number of years, and any surface infrastructure was removed. The critical point being, when we took this on, we had no access to the historic licences or permits. So the first thing I did when I looked at this project was did a sort of desktop review of all the historical paperwork that we had. And we collected this from institutes, from academies, from universities, from people's attics and people's cellars in Olivo itself. And critically, actually, a breakthrough event, we found out that an American consultant called MINEX had been commissioned by the EU to review the project in 2007. And they'd collected all of the data, and it was actually lurking out in America. And so on me sending over a document proving that we were the natural successors of the project and a case of whiskey, the project director from MINEX sent a lorry load of documents back, and we got the complete geological records for the project. But we needed to, whilst critically we're a private company, we do not need to do the PFS and DFS required for a public company or to go and achieve project finance from one of the banks. Whether project finance would even be available in this day and age. But still, we need to protect our investment, and we needed to look at the historical work. And we prioritised our risk, and first we looked at geology. And so we commissioned, using Wardell Armstrong, a UK-based consultancy, we commissioned a JORC-compliant verification programme where we looked at 10% of the historical geological channel samples and drill holes and twinned them, aligned with best international practice. And actually, that programme took nearly a year and very reassuringly confirmed actually the work that had been done in the Yugoslavian time to a great level of accuracy and veracity. We identified in our gap analysis actually there was very little structural geology conducted, not least of which, frankly, because in the 70s and 80s that wasn't really a discipline where a lot of effort was put in. Again, we used Wardell Armstrong to come and do this. One area of significant weakness in this project is that within our concession agreement we were prevented from using chemicals. So we could not use froth flotation, we had to use geology. And this is a fundamental part of the design of the project, and therefore we commissioned extensive metallurgical test work. Again, Wardell Armstrong, SGS, both in the UK on the mineralogy and lab level work, and then across to South Africa to Mintec, and a small gravity specialist called Peacock and Simpson. I set the requirement for a 60% grade concentrate from 75% recovery. For a gravity process, that is a hard task, and it took us a lot of effort to bring the engineering design and the flow sheet into line with that, not least of which because the ore in Olivo is very variable, and we're now actually conducting a geometallurgical campaign to assist us with the future planning of the project. But that's something we can talk about offline. Mine design and planning, on the whole, felt more confident here. We are narrow vein miners, we operate a number of mines, and equally we brought in a technical director with narrow vein mining experience from Australia, but still we engaged a third-party consultant to help guide us on this, a smaller house called Barra. And finally, on the tailings dam, this was an area of significant weakness within Bosnia. There are 2 companies licensed to write a project for a tailings dam, But both were happy to admit that they did not have the skills to do this. So we went out again to the market and have engaged Knight Peacehold to provide the design here. Just I think one point when I'm talking about the consultants, the whole way through this project, as we contracted consultants to provide us engineering work, it was also a large part of their remit was to also provide training, mentoring and monitoring of our own engineering staff. And that's been a key success actually in the develop of this mine from scratch. And still all of these consultants are engaged to a lesser or greater extent in coming back and conducting annual peer reviews nowadays of the activities of our engineering staff. And that's something we embrace and I will continue to do at this project. Quite rightly, opening a mine is not supposed to be an easy thing to do. Quite properly, there are supposed to be barriers to entry and requirements for you to achieve. But I don't think I had any idea quite how difficult it was going to be. This is the first exploitation licence issued in the country for over 30 years. In fact, perversely, this was the first exploitation licence issued in the country since the exploitation licence for this mine had been issued 30 years previously. Required, amongst others, we had to write a new elaborate, which of course had to be reporting to local code, GKZ compliant. So whilst we were operating in JORC, we had to write an elaborate in GKZ. We had to do the environmental permits, the water permits. The extension of the concession took 18 months because we needed a larger surface area. And that delayed the whole project by 18 months. We couldn't do anything. Purchase of private land. In the end, it actually turned out, even though this was declared as in the public interest, it was actually more effective to negotiate directly with the landowners and buy from them than try and use the expropriation laws. And again, if anyone's interested, I can talk about that afterwards. It was a fascinating set of affairs. Conversion of land use from forestry and agriculture to construction to get the urbanistic permit, to then get the exploitation permit. And of course, in Bosnia, you work at municipal, cantonal, national and federal levels for this. We had to get 42 separate permits from 30 different government departments. Social and community. We had a real advantage at the start of this project because the concession agreement actually listed the concerns of the local community, and they were water supply, drinking water for the town, and there was one very sensitive road, and that was actually listed in the concession agreement that we couldn't use chemicals and that we couldn't use this road. That was a huge advantage because from day one I actually knew what the concerns of the community were, and from day one I could actually address those very quickly. So we designed a mine that did not require to use that road. It's cost us both in terms of time and money, but it resolved that issue. Equally, we're using a gravity process. Now I hope in the future I can demonstrate to the community that the gravity process works, that we're safe operators, and that we might be able to bring in a small amount of flotation in the future, perhaps to scavenge out whatever we lose to the tailings. But it gave me a very good head start. Even though there had been a fledgling mine here 30 years ago, there was no mining legacy left in Olivet. We had access to no trained miners, to no experience whatsoever. Yes, up the road in Tuzla you had the coal mines, but a different skill set, too far away, and if I'm brutally honest, I didn't want to import any of the operating standards out of the Bosnian coal mines anywhere near our operation. The local engineers, whilst professional and competent, have not had the chance on the whole to bring themselves up to international standards, and I refer back to my point that from the start that was part of the deal for the consultants in their work, that they had to do this as well and help us. Broadly speaking, there's a local acceptance of mining, and broadly speaking at national level there was as well, but more about that in a moment. One utterly fascinating point, and actually for lots of us that operate in the Balkans you'll recognise this, but it turned out that after a couple of months, the mere fact that we paid our staff on payday each month, month in, month out, was the single most important thing to the population, which should be amazing to us all. It wasn't the duty of care or the health and safety standards that we were leading, it was actually our ability to pay people on time that started our reputation off. And I've actually now tried very hard to make sure that we've gone beyond this, and now actually people are respecting us as a good company and one that looks after its staff. So what were our challenges? Firstly, there was no experience at any level of government of issuing a new mining licence. It's not their fault, it's no one's fault, they'd never done it before. No one had been given a new one, so we had to go on this journey together. Outdated codes, A lot of the laws were still referring back to the 1960s and 70s, the Green Book of Mining, the Book of Regulation, and all the rest of it. And again, very Bosnia-specific, but actually most of the code reflected the coal mining industry and not hard rock. And still to this day, we're having to fight legislation or written code that requires us to buy machinery fit for a coal mine with all of the safety measures that you need in a gas environment that we do not need, and we deal with this on a daily basis. A very interesting one, the moral component, adopting best international practice versus adhering to local legislation. So what do you do when you're faced with a local legislation that actually requires far less rigorous adherence to some of the international codes, to the equator principles and the like? Well, the simple answer is that you try where you can to adopt international, because A, that's the right thing to do, but B, also you're future-proofing yourself, because the legislation will change. So wherever you can, and if you can't adopt best international practice, make sure that you've taken the effort to allow your operation to be able to do that. So take the small steps at the front to be able to change that in the future. A number of specific engineering challenges, I've mentioned them, structural geology, the tailings dam. Variations to accepted mining techniques is a problem we will continue to have, whereby again, the code is very prescriptive and we're trying to be a little bit more flexible in our operations, but we'll continue to work with the stakeholders to achieve this. Managing local stakeholders' expectations, and I think anyone who operates a mine will be very aware of this. From day one, we were expected, by the municipality particularly, to be engaged in the same way that a former mine in Yugoslavia would have been engaged in the whole social environment of that community. We were expected to be contributing to all levels of municipal life. We were expected from day one actually to be contributing towards infrastructure projects in the community, as an operating mine might be. However, from the start, I was very clear to the mayor and the municipality that this was a two-way deal. His job was to help us get to the point that we were creating revenue. When we're creating revenue, when we're returning value back to the investor, then I will start to pay my part of the deal and I will start to get involved in the local community and the infrastructure projects. But he needed to help us first. He had to take responsibility for his part in this as well, and that was a crucial part of the negotiations with the local team to get to that stage. Well, successes, we've got an exploitation licence. We're accepted in the community, we have the licence to operate. The mine opened in 2018, we're now stoping, ore is being produced. The processing plant's been commissioned, it will be delivered and working, producing bulk concentrate in Q2 2019. Not a big mine, we have 120 staff to date, we'll go up to about 200 in total. Crucially, of the 120, 100 are from the local community, and these are young men and women with no experience whatsoever that we have brought in from the streets and the farms of Olivo and trained them. And I'm utterly delighted that we now have the first, what they call first miners, who are now from zero, who are now taking on responsibility as shift supervisors in the mine. We had an opportunity to start a fresh health and safety system. We had an opportunity to break the historic health and safety problems of the Bosnian coal mines and indeed the wider region. We implemented that from top to bottom. We made management absolutely responsible and culpable for everything that happens, and that is not the case everywhere. And today we have had zero reportable accidents despite having 4 years of underground operations. Another huge success actually has been the input and involvement of both the British Embassy and the European Union missions in helping us deliver the project. I've come to the end of my 15 minutes. All of us need to persevere. We all need to be determined. We have to be tenacious. You have to just keep going. I'm a project manager. We do a Gantt chart at the start of the project. We look at what the law says about the required deadlines for issuance of permits, and then you make first contact with the ministry and you can rip the Gantt chart up. No Gantt chart ever survives contact with the government. The decisive support of the UK and EU diplomatic missions. There were points where we had a complete impasse, and the British ambassador himself actually chaired a meeting between 3 government departments and shut the door and said no one is leaving this room until we have made headway, and he achieved it. We shouldn't have had to do that, but we did, and it worked. I think the use of the international consultants, not just to give us engineering expertise, but also to train, mentor and monitor our fledgling engineering team, has been another key success. And for the authorities, the Minister's not here, but he mentioned this in his speech, I am very clear that to create wealth in an economy, you need to give us the opportunity to generate that first. We are not here to exploit your natural resources. We are not here to profiteer. We are here in partnership with the government. And if you let us do our job, we will, as Kamal is doing in Sasa, we will put money into the communities, and that money will filter out into the whole of the country and make a difference to the GDP and the wider economy. Another thing I'd say to government, if you've got mines starting in your jurisdictions, as we've got people attempting to do here as well, get joined up government. Don't operate in stovepipes. Form a pan-government task force or working group that meets once a month. Actually help the investor achieve what he's trying to do. The faster he can do it, the faster he generates revenues, and the faster he will be putting money into your economy. I don't want to advocate any form of preferential treatment for mining companies, but similarly, when we put together tenders, when we put together concessions, let's make the barriers and the hurdles to entry sufficiently rigorous that the people who come in can actually do the job that they're signing up to do. And we've got countless examples of that. And further to that, last point would be, again to government, equally, if we fail to do what we've said we will do, if we have failed to do any exploration on those licences that we carpet-bagged 3 or 4 years ago, then throw us out and let someone else have a turn. That's it. That's enough of my lecture. Thank you. Good day.
Thank you. Dear organizers, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to present today in front of you the mining investment opportunities in the Republic of Kosovo. As you all may know, Kosovo is the youngest country in Europe. It is now just a decade that we exist as an independent country. The approximate population of Kosovo is about 2 million. 50% of the population are younger than 20 years old. Here are some numbers, also general numbers for geography, population, and economy, for which I will not take a lot of your time, but you will have in the slides later on. Someone will look on it. My presentation is formulated like to answer in the questions that a lot of investors made to us: if there are existing minerals, what is the legal framework, decision-making process, licensing procedures, geological framework, infrastructure, taxation, labor forces, and so on. And also what data is available, how to get it, how much it is. And when we speak for the minerals, also Kosovo is very known for having a lot of minerals, such as lignite. Kosovo has the largest lignite reserves in Europe. Lead, zinc, nickel, bauxite, magnesite, chrome, copper, gold, and silver. Lignite, we have 12.5 billion tons of the proven reserves. Lead, zinc, there are more than 60 million tons of proven reserves. These are more concentrated in the Trepča belt, in the Trepča mines, Stanterg, Artana, Crnac, Belobrdo. Nickel, we have 13 million tons proven reserves, bauxite, magnesium. As you can see also on the right of the slides, we have a lot of industrial minerals as well. Also, for the minerals, I can conclude that Kosovo has a lot of minerals. Even these are just some numbers for the proven reserves, but we have much more possibilities for the new exploration. Here is one slide for institutional and regulatory setup. Also on top of it is Kosovo Assembly or Kosovo Parliament. And on the left we have Government of Kosovo and Ministry for Economic Development, and on the right it's Independent Commission for Mines and Minerals. I put this graphic in order to show how our mining sector is functioning. As you can see, also Ministry for Economic Development is making the mining strategy, mining policy, and monitoring the implementation of the licensing process. Independent Commission for Mines and Minerals. It is a regulatory body which regulates and oversees all the mining sector in Kosovo, and we report directly to the Kosovo Parliament. ICMM also issues all the licenses, inspection and mining of the mining activities, collecting of royalties. Why is important that ICMM reports directly to the Kosovo Parliament? This is because we as institutions, we are not affected if there is government change or elections, because ICMM is a professional body. We are not politically related, and doesn't matter if there are government changes. This doesn't impact the decision-making process in the mining sector. So primary legislation, we have the mining law. Mining law is compatible with EU standards and with EU legislation. We have mining strategy, and since a year we have law on TREPCHA enterprise as well. Licensing procedures. We have 3 licensing procedures in Kosovo. The first one is first come first served procedure. Second one is competitive tendering process and direct negotiation. With the exploration licenses for the metallic minerals can be issued for 3 years with possibility of extension 2 more times. Each extension will its obligation to reduce 50% of the exploration area. For the mining licenses, we issue licenses for the energy minerals 30 years with possibility of extension for 15 more years, and for older minerals 25 plus 25 years extension. For the documentation that is needed for the company to get a license, there are also all standard documentation such as geological elaborate, mine complementary plan, environmental impact assessment, and all the technical documentation. When we speak for the exploration license can be issued also in maximum 60 days. It is, we are obliged to the law. It is very easy process. The company needs to register in Kosovo, to define the area where they want to apply, prepare the exploration program, and some technical documentations. As soon as they apply in ICMM, we proceed with the application in maximum 30 days. For the competitive tendering process, according to the regulation, government of Kosovo has declared 11 areas of special interest. These areas are more, there are already some basic exploration done, such as historical data from the drillings, geophysical survey, geochemical stream sediments. For all these areas, government of Kosovo, it's obliged to announce the tender, and then ICMM, after the company is selected, issues the license in 30 days. The competitive tendering process doesn't mean that the Republic of Kosovo will ask for who is offering the best price for it, but there will be looked for the experience of company and for the investment proposals. The most of these areas of zones of special interest, these are lead, zinc, and nickel mines. We have also prepared some passports for these areas of special interest, for which we show to the interest investors also some data, also what is available there. For example, this is one of the area of special interest called Karache, with commodity of lead zinc. There are drilling results, geophysics, and stream sediment prospections. All the projects that has been done here has been done for from very known European companies. The airborne geophysical survey has been done from British and Finnish geological surveys. Geochemical stream sediment from big consultants, and from the Fischner company from Germany. Direct negotiation process. This is for energy minerals, also for energy production and significant foreign investments. Government can go with direct negotiation with investors. The process is also after they negotiate, government approval, parliament approval, and ICMM issues a license. We have also law on the strategic investment. This is for all minerals. Companies can express their interest to the government of Kosovo, to Minister of Trade Industry. Some criteria is this 30 million minimum investments in the first 5 years, and this is also government offers all one-stop shop for all permits and all documentation they prepare for the investors, and after the decision has been made, ICMM issues the license in 30 days. Here in this map are shown some existing mines operations, as you can see. Also from the top, Beloberdo, Cernat, Stantor, these are all lead zinc mines. These are Trepča mines. Now the Trepča has been established as a public-owned enterprise, and they will look very soon for the private investments on these mines. We have also 2 magnetite mines that will be very soon on the privatization process, and 1 bauxite mine. Nickel mines, they are already privatized. As far as the technical programs that are ready to be offered for the interested investors, we have developed a geological database with a lot of geoscientific maps, Kosovo quarry plan, geochemical stream sediment. All these informations are accessed through our database. The companies can just create their account and log in direct in our database and download this information. As I said, also we have done also airborne geophysical survey, which has been done from Finnish and British geological surveys. These are done for the magnetics, for frequency electromagnetics, and radiometrics. All these informations are available in AICMM. These are some images from the regional geochemistry. For this has been also covered all the territory of the Kosovo. For some areas of special interest, we have prepared some short mineral deposit passports as a short information for the interested investors. For the doing business in Kosovo, Kosovo is liberal, has a liberal trade regime. It is part of CEFTA, Central European Free Trade Agreements, has free trade agreements with European Union, generalized system of preferences with US, trade preferences with Japan, Norway, and with Turkey. It's ongoing. When we speak for the taxes, Kosovo has corporate profit tax 10%. Income taxes, as you can see, starts with 0 to maximum 10%. It's mandatory pension contribution 5%. Value-added tax 18%. What is also very important to mention that it's a tax on dividends, it's 0. There is no tax on dividends. Also, cost of electricity, it's very low compared to the European countries, and average wage in Kosovo is 360 euro monthly average wage. Royalty and minimum exploration fee. Here is a table that I have shown some minerals. For the gold, silver, and platinum minerals is 5% for the kilogram, and for other metallic minerals it's 4.5% per ton. All the royalties prices are based on the London Stock Exchange. If the companies start to process the minerals in Kosovo, we reduce 10% just on after the flotation, and if they smelt it or invest in the smelting in Kosovo, then it's reduction of 20%. For the companies that they get the exploration licenses, they are obliged to invest as a minimum exploration fee. That is 10 euro per hectare in first year, 20 is in the second year, and 30 euro in the third year. If the company doesn't invest this minimum exploration fee, this means they are obliged to pay as a penalty to the state if they cannot report that they have spent it. We have issued a lot of metallic minerals, also exploration licenses. Unfortunately, some of the companies they didn't invest, and we were obliged to cancel to revoke their licenses when they were not. They couldn't report that they have invested on the exploration. With that, there has been made possibilities for the new companies that they have experience and they invest on the exploration. Kosovo has also a very good strategic location. We have to Thessaloniki 330 kilometers, to Durrës 260, to Bar Montenegro 300 kilometers. This means also we are not far from the ports, and also through the railways we have access to the old Europe and world. Also on the doing business, Kosovo has in the past 7 years we have increased for 77 rank improvements. Just in 2018, Kosovo has been ranked for the overall rank of 40 in the World Bank doing business. For the legislation agreements, also as I said, laws of Kosovo are EU compatible. We have loan foreign investment. This protects all foreign investments in Kosovo. Loan strategic investment. This offers a direct negotiation and fast-track admin procedures. There are some conclusions. Also, Kosovo has a considerable mineral potentials. We consider mining as a key economic factor of the Kosovo. Undertakes much effort to attract mining investments. Kosovo also has a unique set of geological and geoeconomical data. We think that we have one excellent regulatory framework, and Kosovo government has identified the mining sector as a priority of the sector. And also we are open for further explore for mineral resources. Thank you very much.